All right, hello and welcome to me too. Welcome to another week, which can only mean one thing, of course. We're here with another great guest, ready to learn from their insights and their leadership wisdom. And as you will have heard me say in the intro, today we're visiting Miss Pauline Kirk, who's currently stationed in Singapore. You'll understand why I say currently at the moment, in a moment when we start talking about it. But, among Pauline's many roles, she's CEO and founder of Femvesta Global. And today, as the name of that company might suggest, we're going to be talking a little bit about money. So in fact, how to become financially fabulous. Now I'm using a trademark term that Pauline has trademarked, so forgive me, Pauline, but financially fabulous, I love that term. Pauline, welcome to the ET Project.
Oh, thank you, Wayne. Thank you for having me here today.
Yeah, excellent. I always get quite excited when I can talk to people or chat with people that have traveled so extensively as you have in your career. So I thought maybe as a starting intro in our conversation, if you don't mind, could you just share with the listeners a little bit about the roles that you've had and the places you've lived and worked?
Yeah, sure. So I really started my journey in the British military. So I was actually an officer in the British Navy, and that job took me to Iraq. So I spent some time in the Middle East. I actually served in Iraq in 2002, 2003 Gulf War. So that was really the catalyst of travel. And on the back of that, I also used to travel a lot as a child. My dad was an international jet setter in his own career. So I've always had that ability to, the open-mindedness of being someone who travels a lot, because as a child, we moved around schools a lot. I loved it, and my brother hated it. He struggled to make friends. And for me, I just loved meeting new people, new experiences. For me, that really was the foundations of, where I am today. And to your point, Wayne, I've had a very privileged life where I've got to live and work in 10 countries. And some of those countries are in Europe. So I've worked and lived in Holland. I've lived in the Czech Republic. I spent some time in the US. I also spent some time in the Middle East, as I mentioned, but I also went back to the Middle East several years later. And it changed a lot, because when I first went to the Middle East, women actually weren't allowed to sit in the same cafe as men. Right. So I actually had a glass door with women and children on one side, and then on the other side were all the men, and all my male colleagues happened to be on the other side of the window, and there's me on one side. So that was very interesting to then go back several years later and realize that the world shifted. And in the Middle East now, it's not an issue anymore. It's not taboo for women and men to actually be in the same room together, especially if you're not married. Yeah, I've had the privilege. Sorry, go on, Wayne.
No, I was going to say I've spent some time in the Middle East myself, and it's a very different culture to what we grow up with, particularly in the Western world. So I understand where you're coming from.
Oh, yes, it was such a beautiful experience just to see, different cultures and how different cultures are from our own culture. I was actually made redundant from a company in the UK called Marks and Spencer's. Most people be familiar with that organization. And we just launched international home delivery to 121 countries around the world, click and collect, choose your store, choose your day in 2008, 2009. And then what happened was the GFC hit, the global financial crisis hit. And my name was up for review. And I made a decision that I wasn't going to allow my name to be just called out with no contingency plan. So I believe in fate in the universe. And I actually got on the train in the evening, got a free newspaper, the Metro newspaper in the London Underground. And in it had an advertisement to go to Australia for £10. So I actually, long story short, I ended up in Australia because it cost me £10. So when I tell people that story, like, why did you go to Australia? I'm like, it was £10. And that's the only reason I'm in Australia. And then I met my husband. I got visas, and I've now got a passport for Australia. You can tell by my accent, I'm originally from the UK. And, then I got the privilege of working in New Zealand, and then it took me to different parts of Asia, being this part of the world. So currently I'm residing in Singapore. I've been in Singapore now 1 year, and who knows where we're going to be in the future. So my husband and I are very free spirits when it comes to travel. We love to travel. It's very much in our DNA. And with that, then, I've also had the privilege here in Asia of working in China, Malaysia, Thailand, and now here in Singapore. So it's actually my second time here in Singapore.
Yep. we could talk for many many minutes just around all of those places you've been to. So I was smiling to myself when you said you got to you. It was like I envisaged back in the 1770s when the convicts were on the ship heading from the UK to Sydney Cove in Australia. You're being sentenced almost to go to Australia. But I'm sure you enjoyed it. Whereabouts in Australia did you end up?
So on my £10 ticket, we had a choice. So actually, Wayne, it's interesting you say that comment because it was actually 40 years of the £10 POM who actually sailed from the UK by boat. And
Right.
it was also 25 years of STA travel, which is why they're offering these £10 tickets.
Okay.
So there's only 150 for the whole of the UK. I had no idea at the time. I just thought it was 150 tickets per STA travel store. And actually, I turned out I was number 147. So I was very fortunate enough to get a ticket. I did have to sleep in the street for 2 days in London, Victoria, to get my number to get through the door. But where I ended up was I started in Melbourne. So I flew directly from London to Melbourne with Qantas. And then from there, I had the privilege of actually working in several states across Australia with different companies. So I started with BHP, for example, in Western Australia. I also did some work for Officeworks and some big projects there in Australia. Did some work for Linfox and Toll, some big logistics companies. So I also spent some time in Queensland. I also spent some time in Sydney.
You're a very well-travelled individual. So in addition, I mentioned your business, Femvestors Global, but in addition to that, you know, you're doing so many other things, like you're consulting partner at Apex, SCM Supply Chain Management, you're a certified results coach, you're a senior leader with Tony Robbins and his community. It's quite a package load, and I wonder, how do you cope with it all? Like, how do you fit it into your busy schedule?
Being super organized and having a great team around me.
Okay.
So I'm very clear on my productivity. I'm a productivity master in some areas because for me, I don't spend my life scrolling. I have my routine. And yes, it's a little bit fluid, but I'm very regimental in my morning routine. That's maybe because of my military days. So I'm very structured in my morning routine. And I'm very structured in terms of my quality time with my family. I put boundaries in place. I have non-negotiables. And then for me, it's around, right, okay, these are the things I need to focus on right now. These are things on my not to-do list, because I do have a not to-do list. And I focus on the things that are important. What's going to add value to what I'm doing versus what's just filling my day? Because there is a big difference.
Yeah. I know when we connected the first time, you showed me your office set up around you, and the listeners or the viewers can probably see the flip chart paper on the wall to your right, and you panned around with your camera and you showed me a 12-month chart, I guess, with a lot of post-it notes on there, and yeah, there it is. In your bio or in part of your profile, it talks about Pauline being the super organized, process-driven sort of person. And, you know, just looking at your bookshelf behind you, looking at the whole environment you're operating in, it's crystal clear that you have this mindset. And, you know, I think that's a great takeaway for our listeners, that to achieve the things you want to achieve, there's different types of people and different ways of approaching it, but in your case, you achieve it through your organization, through your structure in your lifestyle. So I think that's a nice takeaway.
Yeah, thank you, Wayne. I mean, a lot of people spend their time scrolling on Netflix and chill, and it's not in my DNA. It's, you know, for me, I put my, I'll give your viewers a tip. I actually put my phone on the other side of my bed. So I actually physically have to get out of bed to turn my alarm clock off in the morning. And therefore, I'm already out of bed. And therefore, I'm not spending time scrolling because the phone is next to me. So that's something I've put in place, because most people are losing like maybe an hour, 45 minutes, half an hour in the morning, just endlessly scrolling around what's going on in the world. For me, that's not important. For me, it's important around what's my goals, what am I trying to achieve, what's my mission.
Yeah. I would like to say I'm as clear and concise as you seem to be. Some days I'm good. Some days I do catch myself in front of the screen looking at what's happening in the world. So yeah, I think I can learn from you for sure. You know, what also stands out to me, Pauline, is you have all of this, but even with all of that, you're still doing so much more. Like you're an advocate for women's rights. You volunteer both time and money, right, for women and children's education, I think in Africa and Asia, correct?
That's right. So we're a circular economy, if you want to put it that way, or an ecosystem. So Femvestors Global, we support women with financial education, predominantly professional women who need support in this area. We're not educated in this area. And many of us are earning great money, but then we don't know what to do with it, or earning any sort of money. And then we don't know what to do with it. We don't know who to go to, we don't know who to trust. How do I get started? You know, just a lot of people just don't know. So then what happens is the money just sits in a bank account and it gets spent. So my mission is to educate, and I say women predominantly because we are so further behind when you look at statistics. And I talk on stages around the world about the statistics of women and where we're headed in retirement, and they're pretty dire. You know, yes, we have a 48% divorce rate. Women actually statistically are actually better than men at investors, but we don't invest because we don't understand, for many of us, how to get started, what to do. We don't have the confidence or the courage to step outside and actually do it because we weren't educated in school. And the finance industry actually keeps us uneducated because that's how they make money. They make money from us being uneducated, which is why there is no education in this area. So most of us are in the dark, and I have my own story around having money to then having no money, being taken advantage of by my own financial advisor. So I call it paying the dumb tax. And then what happened was I had to make sure then, well, how do I know the next person's not going to take advantage of me? So I've literally mastered my craft over the 15 years to then go, right, what do I need to know about financial education? Because when I was in my current corporate job, what I used to do in the evenings, I used to actually be a stock market trader, because being in Asia and Australia, New Zealand time zone allowed me with the geography was to then allow me to then trade the US stock markets. So then that's where I basically started teaching myself, and I'm like, well, who best to look after my money than me? So going back to your point around Femvestors Global, what we do is we teach women financial education. I say we do have couples, and I do actually do financial wellness classes for corporates now as well. And any money that comes into our community, we actually donate 80% of those profits to charity. That's right, 80. And with that money, then we support kids' education and women's empowerment programs around the world. So we have partners, for example, who support us, to your point, Wayne, who help support us build wells in Africa. So kids can go to school instead of having to walk all day to get dirty water from a river. We actually give them an education because we're building a well in the local community. For example, in Malaysia, if you're a refugee status, you legally can't go to school. You have to be sponsored by someone, and the government's got no money. So what happens is that our community donates money to refugees, so then kids can go to school who are deemed as refugee status, and they're predominantly from Afghanistan, Myanmar. And then we've partnered with another charity called the Malala Yousafzai Foundation. She was a lady who got shot by the Taliban, if you're familiar with her, and she's all about women's empowerment. So these are the three charities that we support. And I said I wanted to do something for my own charity. And so my husband and I got some land in India, and my plan is to 3D print a school. And my plan is to take kids from rural communities, give them an education in a boarding school environment. And then we bought the land next door that grows wheat. And the plan is that kids don't just get an education in school, they actually learn some real farming skills and then take them back to their own communities and be self-sustaining. That is our mission.
It's fantastic, Pauline. I normally would ask you at the end of our conversation, but I'll ask now, seeing we're talking about it. So the money that you're using for this comes from the business, but is there any way people can contribute financially to what you're doing, or do it purely through your business?
So on our website, we actually have all the charities links directly. So if anyone wants to go to, and that's fantastic. Thank you so much, Wayne. So if anyone actually goes, go to femvestorsglobal.com. You can actually go on our website. We have a charity section in there. You can see the charities and you can donate to those charities directly.
Okay, fantastic. You touched on a point that I wanted to ask you about, and it may be sensitive, so we don't have to go down this path, but you mentioned your backstory. It's a very interesting backstory when it comes to money. I'm talking specifically now, and you talk about on your website and in your profile where you didn't have the best of times during your life at certain stages with money, which led you, I guess, to where you are now. But I wonder if you'd mind sharing a little about the financial challenges that you sort of faced at different times, and how you managed to climb your way out of the hole, so to speak. Would you mind talking about that?
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to talk about it now, Wayne, because it's something I've kept very quiet and close to my chest. And we actually just produced a book that became an Amazon International One bestseller. And actually, a chapter of the book is actually going through this in a lot more detail. But if I summarize, the extract of the book is that it was around, I mentioned that I was in the military and I served in Iraq in 2002, 2003.
Yeah.
And when I left there, PTSD was never diagnosed. We were talking in the early noughts. PTSD was not a thing, post-traumatic stress disorder. And for me, I just knew that the person who went to Iraq wasn't the same person who returned from Iraq. That just something that didn't sit right with me, and I didn't really know what it was. And the only way of me coping around feeling good about myself was to go and hard and spend a lot of money on shoes, bags, clothes, hairdressers, nails, makeup, whatever it was, to make myself feel good about myself, because there was something missing in my life. And some of your audience may experience this, but many of us put money on our credit cards because we may want to make ourselves feel good, and therefore we use money and our finances as a void because we're missing something in our lives. And then that became a vicious cycle. I got into 10 credit cards. I was in the UK at the time, talking £86,000, depending on where we live, it's about $120,000 in debt over 10 credit cards. And I just kept stacking. Oh, and the thing is, with the financial institutions, when you're in debt, they keep giving you more money. Here's another credit card. Here's another credit card. Instead of controlling it, I'm fueling the beast inside me, which is like, oh, more free money. I've got more, because I didn't ever thought about it as my money. I thought about it as the bank's money, because it was the bank's money until I got the bill. So psychologically, I just kept spending more money because the banks keep giving me more money to spend, not realizing theoretically that's actually my own money. It's in my psychology, it was the bank's money. So it got out of control. I didn't have a lot of self-worth, and I dated the wrong men, not once, but twice. I dated one guy and we ended up buying a property together, and another gentleman I dated, I ended up being guarantor for his business. And unfortunately, the relationship didn't work out and the business didn't work out in both instances. So what happened was I then had to carry that debt as well as my own 10 credit card situation. I'm now having to sort out financial situations for a business and a property. So I'm in a lot of stress. And I grew up in an environment, Wayne, where we never spoke about money in our household. Right. So a lot of what I talk about now through Fembesters Global is that our views on money are now proven. It's between the ages of 0 and 10 is our views on money. And because it's based on our environment growing up and our society growing up. And anything after the age of 10 is based on our own real experience. So our views on money a lot of the time are actually based on generational views around our grandparents, which become our parents' views, which then become our views. Right. Now, so in my household specifically, money was never discussed. My parents never argued about money, but we also never spoke about money. So for me, I had so much guilt inside me, and I've grown up in an environment where we haven't been able to talk about money. And therefore, we never spoke about it. And therefore, I felt like I couldn't go to my family and talk about money because society and environment around me is that we don't talk about money. It's a taboo issue even still in 2023. So I felt like I was on my own and I had to get myself out of it. So I ended up working additional work. I ended up working many jobs just to try and get my head above water. I actually, slept on friends' floors. I was couch surfing, familiar with that terminology, where I just basically trying to get all the money in and was basically trying to pay as little expenses as possible just to pay off the debt. And that's literally what I did to try and get myself out of the situation. And then this is where my career really became where it was and where it is today, is literally going, I can't settle. I can't keep working these 3 jobs and I can't keep earning little money. I need to somehow get more skills and put my hand up more and take whatever it's going to take to then put myself out there to get more money. So I actually went from someone who worked in the military to then working several jobs to pay off debt to then actually becoming the global director of a mining company. And it's one of the biggest in the world. So that's how much I hustled, if you want to put it that way, because every time I kept raising my hand, get more skills, I went to the library and I had free time, read a lot of books, put my hand up every single time there's an opportunity, put my hand up every time a position came up in a business or in an article, around, we're looking for people. Yeah, I'll go for it. May not have all the skills, but I'll go for it anyway. And I literally sold myself to my corporate life. I was slave to corporate because I had to keep pushing myself to pay off the debt.
Yeah,
so that's why in a very short space of time, I've gone from, where I was and where I started to where I ended up, because I was literally like, raise my hand, move jobs every 12 to 15 months, took project worked on. So, I did a lot of project work in my background. I was like, right, next project, how much you pay me? Okay, I'll do it. You want me to go where? Yeah, I'll get on a plane and go there. So I literally hustled just to pay off the debt.
The alternative, I guess, Pauline, would have been far more dire. Well, who knows? But you could have taken an alternative path and put yourself on the couch and taken the drugs, taken the alcohol, and just given up, I guess. But obviously, that's not you.
Wayne, I was there. I had a decision, and everyone has that position in their life where they're such at their lowest point in their life, they have to do something. And either way, I always say, choose your hard. Doing nothing is hard. Getting letters through the door is hard. People harassing you for money is hard, because it wasn't the days of mobile phones and you could screen your caller. People were ringing the landline and harassing me. People were knocking on my front door and harassing me and trying to find out where I was, and, and all that sort of stuff. So either way was hard. Getting reminders through the mail all the time is hard. People constantly chasing you for money was hard. But then so's hard of going, right, well, I've got a decision to make. I'm at this point, this crossroads in my life. Either I file for bankruptcy, and so someone who's, had a very senior position in the military and be called an officer and mom for so long and being put on this pedestal, and I wasn't prepared to put my finger on the enter button and be with this black mark against my name of someone who's actually filed for bankruptcy.
Right.
So what I did was then go, right, I've got to get educated, which is when I, like you said, Wayne, drugs, alcohol, all those things. And then I was like, well, that's going to either be this and this way and nothing's going to change, or I've got to change. And then I need to find ways of how it's going to happen. And believe it or not, and I talk about it in my book, is that Oprah Winfrey used to come on the TV at stupid times. And yes, I didn't watch a lot of TV, but everyone needs a bit of an outage. So for me, it's like white noise. And she just kept appearing on the screen at weird times of the night. And then I was like, you know what? I need to learn from this woman, because this woman's been from such adversity and abject poverty in her life. And she's so successful at what she's doing. Success leaves clues, as Tony Robbins says. So for me, I started to look at people who are successful and then go, right, and we didn't have the internet, so literally everything you're seeing is on TV or in a library. So for me, I'm looking at people going, right, well, who's successful? What are they doing to be successful? And then I go, well, that's what I need to start thinking about and mimicking. The way I talk, the way I act, stopping taking, the things that are the stimulants that are holding me back. So let's cut that out. Right. Okay, now let's get the head right. So let's get myself right so I can glean from the inside outwards. And that's literally what I did, was I started to talk like Oprah in terms of mindset and go, you know what, we only have one life. We can do anything. It's up to us. Yes, it's hard, but we do it anyway. What is fear? Fear is putting one foot in front of the other. What's courage? Just taking a shot. It may not work out, but just going with your gut. And that's literally what pushed me to then get out of the situation I was in.
Yeah, it's a fantastic story and one that's so encouraging. And I know, looking at your business, you share a lot of that with the programs you offer. You have I downloaded it, by the way, yesterday, but you have an ebook called Simple Guide to Investing, which I'd recommend for anybody that is at something like what you've just described. It's a great entry into the financial journey that people need to take. I also noticed on your website, and we're going to come back to the business and talk more about that in a minute, but thank you for sharing about the journey. I mean, it truly is one that I can only imagine would have been extremely difficult. So thank you for sharing about that. I notice as part of that education that you mentioned, surrounding yourself, and you mentioned Oprah Winfrey, but You also connect with Tony Robbins and his whole team. And you just mentioned before we went live, you were with Blair Sinclair. How much does that, surrounding yourself with the positive environment, how much does that really benefit you?
No words can describe, Wayne, is the reality, because when you surround yourself with people who are another level, you automatically think at that level. And I'll give you an example. I was with an esteemed group of Tony's clients in a room quite recently, and I said, you know, my mission, I'm going to build a school. This is my ideas and everything else, and I put it out there. And the response back from one of the people in the room with me was like, "Why are you building one school, Pauline?" And I'm like, why am I only building one school? Where most people are like, oh my God, you're building a school. That's so exciting. But I'm in a room full of people and they're like at another level where I want to be. And they're like, but Pauline, why are you only building one school? Why don't you build more schools? And when you're surrounded with people who's going to challenge your thinking and elevate you to the next level, that's the room you want to be in. Because you don't want to be the smartest person in the room. Because then you're playing in that level. If you really want to take yourself and your mindset to another level, you need to think and be surrounded with people. Now, I've learned along the way that, who you spend time with is who you become. And you're the fifth person of your 4 closest friends, and you're a blend of those. So you have to look at your environment and who you're spending time with. Because if you're spending time with certain types of people, you're going to become that certain type of person. If you're in a room full of people that's elevating on personal growth, on a personal development journey and want another level, you need to spend time and seek out your people. And I call it vibe with your tribe. So if you need to think about who's in your environment today, who you're spending time with, and are they the right people for you and where you want to go in your life? Because if they're not your people, and you need to find new people and be in a different room. Yeah,
it's so true. I just spent the weekend. You may have also joined in on the virtual launch pad with Dean Graziosi and Tony Robbins and the whole host of highly motivating guests that they bring on their 3-day program. It's incredible just listening to the people, but you get so involved and so emotionally connected yourself that it's almost impossible not to do anything with that. And I heard Tony say during this program, he now is invested in something like 111 companies for billions of dollars net worth. When I can recall, not too long ago, maybe 2-3 years ago, it was about half that number. So to your point about one school versus multiple schools, the mindset of these people is, it's just so different to the average person's mindset. So very true. And
and I love that, Wayne. I was actually at Blessing's event that weekend, otherwise I would have attended. But the reality is that, most of us today know more what's going on with Kim Kardashian than we do with our own money, and this is what, my niece is 11 and she's got a dog and it's got more followers than I do about financial education. So the thing is, we're looking at certain things. A lot of us are looking for entertainment in our life as opposed to education in our life, and I call it edutainment. Today we want edutainment, so let's make it fun. Let's make numbers fun. A lot of people come to me and go, oh, Pauline, I love what you do because you have so much energy and you're so passionate when you teach and you put it in language that I understand and it's very simple, and you make our sessions fun. I start, with some fantastic music every time I do an introductory, and people join in, and there's like a different vibe in the room already. And it's not someone who's just going to be talking at me for a period of time. We get up, we stretch around, we move our bodies a little bit, and we make it entertaining. So I call it edutainment now. It's not so much either one or the other. Let's learn at the same time in a fun environment. And that's really what we're needed, whether it be in schools, whether it be in colleges. I've got my own issues around, the university system these days, and also starting businesses is around how we finding the people that we want to spend time with.
Yes, yeah, for sure. On your website, you have a section where you do a webinar, I believe, on the book called The Path, which is Peter Mallouk and Tony Robbins' book, predominantly Peter Mallouk. What is it that you do in that webinar? I'm just curious. If you don't
mind. Thanks, Wayne. You've definitely done your research. So we run actually weekly book clubs. So we At certain times a year, we pick a key book that's an investing book that's not complex, it's full of numbers and stats, and and it's just challenge you thinking about it in a different way. So what we do is we go through a chapter a week, we keep it simple, and we only charge $97 for this. And I say 80% of it goes to charity. So each week we break it down. So we work through one chapter of the book a week, and then you go away and actually think about, how can you apply that in your own life, depending on where you're at on your journey. It doesn't have to have the answer today, but thinking about it. And then we have an accountability group each week. And then we have a private Facebook group. And then actually people put in where they're up to in their own journey. And that's open we have women only groups because some women want a safe space to talk. And we also have mixed groups as well. So anyone can join those groups. So we offer those throughout the year because we break it down because we're trying to keep things simple. And the books are not just about investing. I choose Tony Robbins' books because it's around what do we actually want our money for? So there's one thing to talk about investing, saving, and budgeting and all those other things, but there's another thing to talk about what is actually we want my money for? Because what we need money for the future, but most of it hasn't stopped and taken a breath and go, what do we actually want our money for? And what do we want our lives to look like in the future? And let's think about that to then go, right, well, I'm here today. This is where I need to be and how I'm going to get there. So that's really why I choose the books that we choose, is because we're thinking more than just us.
Right.
And Tony talks about the secret of living is giving. It's thinking about, not just, that's what I talk about, contribution of time as well as money to charities and doing something more than yourself. It's a very fulfilling life that I lead. Now, to your point earlier, Wayne, yes, I talked about my career and the career ladder, and I was earning amazing money traveling around the world, getting paid, very good money to be overseas and travel and go at short notice for, big construction projects. And the reality is that there was always something missing in my life. It was my parents' definition of success was go out, get a job, get a better job, get a better job, get a better job, marry someone, be the CEO of the company, be C-suite, and then have a family and, retire and die. So that's, our parents' version of success. Now, for me, I just knew that there was something missing. I knew that, yes, I was earning great money. On paper, I should be the happiest person on the planet, and yet I'm still freaking miserable because I don't know what it is, but there's something missing. I'm wishing my life away. And in the corporate world, I was like on a Monday excited to live to Saturday because I've got a busy week. Friday, I'm exhausted. Sunday, I'm back on emails again. It's February and I'm excited at my one holiday booked in September, and I'm counting down my life away until I get to that one holiday. And then I'm in my 40s. I just hit my 40s. And then it's like, wow, when I hit 65, and that's literally how I was talking about my life for so long, because I was so stuck up in my corporate life, so caught up in the money and the job titles. And then I was like, I'm just hollow. But on paper, everyone's like, oh my God, you should be so happy to life. And I actually felt, sad in a way and guilty because people would love to be in my position. And yet I'm not happy in my position. I'm so freaking miserable.
It's incredible. I mean, I've read The Path. I think it's a great book. I'm an avid follower of Peter Mallouk. And, he and Tony came together, I think, for The Unshakable as well, right? And so they're a good combination. But Peter Mallouk, for anyone who doesn't know, I think he has a record for being nominated as the number one financial broker or financial advisor in America 3 years in a row or something. So he's a knowledgeable guy. And, I love in his book, he talks about 4 rules of investing. How much do you lean on that type of knowledge from him and other people as part of what you bring to your business?
So for us, it's the core of what we do. Most people, like I said, true, we all need to save and invest. But most of us aren't thinking that way because we don't know what we actually want to save and invest our money for. So we're starting to think about what type of goals do we want? And, I go through an exercise with people in my community around, what is it? Things for ourselves, and then I get them to go through a process. And it's amazing the things that people write down that they really want in their lives. A lot of the time, those things aren't related to money. They want happiness in their life, time with their family. They want to enjoy, just being able to have their health, and having the ability to get out of bed every day and go for a walk in fresh air. Those things are free and they don't cost anything. Having a happy family, spending time with people we love, those things are priceless. And yet we get so caught up on buying things in a very short term commitment level because we're filling a void because we're not happy about something. And then it's around how do we push past what makes us happy. And, I'm someone who, I don't write gratitude journals. It's just not me. But what I do is I stand in the shower in the morning and go, wow, today's a great day because I'm breathing. I've got air in my lungs, my feet touch the floor, and I've got my mind. Today's a great day. But most of us aren't thinking about that. We keep thinking about what we don't have, what our families have and we don't have, the people around us, my neighbors. We care more about what other people think of us. And quite frankly, we buy things to impress people we don't even like.
Yeah. I agree with you. We deliver a excuse me, a leadership training, and the first topic is around attitude, and we talk about when you first wake up, what are the thoughts that you're having, right? They typically are negative related thoughts, and they set the scene for the whole day. And we try and get people to shift from that to a positive thought, which is essentially what you're talking about as well. You talk about 8 financial profile types, I guess is how you frame it. Predominantly women profiles. However, I love it. I was engrossed reading through it. I wonder if you could just share, I don't know how well you know them off the top of your head, but you have these 8 profiles. I wonder if you could share how you came up with those and what they're all about.
Those 8 profile types are actually generated through speaking with people in my community, going, right, who are we? In terms of what drives us, in terms of our money stories, is it down, because I talk around the money stories and the environment I mentioned briefly growing up. And I know it's also around, what fuels us. So, yes. Some of us are driven by a scarcity mindset. And some of us are driven by the fact that we want to spend money because it makes us feel good. So a lot of time we're driven by, Tony Robbins talks about the 6 human needs. And that really links down to my 8 personality types, is around, am I someone who's constantly worrying about money and my future, and therefore I need to feel safe and secure? Am I someone who constantly spends money because I want to feel good about myself because I'm driven by significance? Am I someone who is, a different personality type around, just I need to be someone who has to save it on a whole nother level, and it becomes literally like the hoarder mentality, so doesn't throw anything away. There's people that save, there's people that spend, but there's a hoarder mentality of not throwing anything away. So thank you, Wayne, for pointing that out. So if people haven't had a chance to go through it, we're actually going to put a quiz together at some point, and my team and I are working through it because it's a lot more work, because we put 8 different personality types down. But they basically give you a good insight around what type of person you are and what makes you tick when it comes to your money. And a lot of things we haven't even thought about when it comes to money. We just do things because it's our conscious or our subconscious mind, and we're like a robot. We just do things because, we just spend money, or we just save money, or we don't do anything with our money, or we don't think about money. So all of us have got different approaches going back to our environments and culture and community growing up around how we feel about money. And therefore, then we just do things on autopilot without really thinking consciously about it.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that came to my mind while I was reading through the different ones was, I can imagine you could have multiple profile types. So you may be dominant in one area, but you may also have some traits that fit into other groups. So I can imagine this will be quite an interesting quiz that you develop. So please
yes.
Let me know when it comes out.
Yes, I will do. I'll definitely keep you posted, because you're right. Wayne, there's always going to be something that's more dominant than the other. But we may be dominant like 80% in one area, but the other 3 may be 78%, for example. So, so there's always going to be one that's more stronger than the other. In all cases, you're always going to have a dominant one, but things shift over time. The person you saw, you spoke to me 20 years ago isn't the person you see today. So we also aren't who we think we are either. We can choose to be different. I always talk about our past does not dictate our future. We can be victim or victor. So we can also look at it and go, right, I have awareness now. And I believe that awareness is one of the best skills that you can ever have, is that I believe that feedback is a gift. And if you have awareness, then you can choose to do something about it. And that's a personal choice. But for me, if I do things I'm not aware and someone points something out to me, I'm like, wow, I can do something about that now because I have awareness to do something about it. And then, to my point, that's a choice to actually go and take action and apply it and make change to whatever that is for you.
You can choose to become financially fabulous. So
definitely.
I love that term, by the way. you have 4 different programs, if I'm correct, that you make available to your clients. Would you like to talk to any of those?
Yeah, so for me, one of the biggest challenges is always about time and money. So, and as I said, we're a social enterprise or an ecosystem, however you want to put it. And the reality is, I'm like, well, let's just call out what time commitment you need and how much it's going to cost. So we have nothing to hide because I say we donate 80% of our profits to charity and we're transparent on what we do. So I'm happy to share what we charge and their time commitment because most people, that's what they think about first is, well, how much time, especially for women, how much time is it going to take? And can I afford this? Now, the reality is I always say, like, our basic program, $75. We run a lot of stuff for free as well. For me, it's around getting people educated, men and women. So, even across our socials, we're posting stuff and content every single day that's just getting you to think about certain things. We offer free challenges throughout the year for the next 30 days. Here's a challenge a day. So we run those through April and Financial Literacy Month. So we're doing a lot of things at no cost because we want to make sure that people are aware around money, because money today is 2023. It's still very much taboo. So in terms of our paid work, to your point, Wayne, our basic program, like I said, is $75. Self-paced, do it yourself. You get emails and activities in your inbox and you just go through it. Well, that's simple, right? You $75 and you can go through at your own pace.
Right.
Done. For people who want another level, we offer a 3-hour masterclass. Again, price and time commitments are on our website along with the dates. We're rolling out a program we can go through it self-paced, a lot more in depth, and that's another price point, again, on our website. And then the only thing that isn't advertised on our website is if you want to work with me privately one-on-one, because everyone is in a different point around their own journey. So therefore, some people may require more sessions for us to break down because some people have no idea about their money. Some people have some idea about their money. Some people know how to save and invest. Some people have no idea. So it comes down to then what's the requirements around you and your own journey for then me to go, well, this is the number of sessions that you're going to require for me to support you on your journey, which is why there's no price for that particular one because everyone's different.
Yeah, for sure. We're coming to the end of our time allocation. Unfortunately, Pauline, we could talk for a long time, but you mentioned the book. I believe it's Phenomenal Women Who Boss Up. Where can they go to find that?
So it's actually on our website. So it's actually on the books and merchandise. So it's a link there on our website. And one thing I'd love to call out, Wayne, is that we actually donate 100% of our profits from that book to an organization called Dress for Success. So they actually support women who've come from predominantly domestic violence, economic abuse, and they need skills to get back on their feet. And what we do is we call it it's reason it's called Dress for Success is they actually get an outfit to wear as part of the community to wear for a job interview, or within that position they get accepted as a role. So they have an outfit so they feel confident because they've got something to wear. So this is where 100% of our profits go to on the book. And I said the ebook is available on Amazon, and I'm just waiting for my physical books to arrive here in Singapore. It is a US based organization, but they do have offices throughout the world. And so so the ebook is available on Amazon right now.
Yeah, it's excellent cause. Anything we haven't spoken about, Pauline, that you would love to share with the listeners?
One thing I'd love to share with the listeners is just take stock of what's going in and going out every single month. And it sounds pretty simple, and I like to keep things simple, but most of us have no idea around what's coming in our account every month and what's going out. We live in a society today, and I talk a lot around the mobile phone, is that we're paying for things on mobile phones. And most of us on average are looking at our phone over 300 times a day. And therefore, our brain doesn't realize anymore that we're actually spending money. So therefore, we have no idea what's going in and out every month. And this is a societal issue now. So I would say, please take those apps off your phone because you do not need them. Get your brain to think that you're actually spending money by taking out a debit card or a credit card, whatever works for you, or even cash, depending on where you live. And getting into the mindset of actually knowing what you've got coming in and going out every month, because that's a starting point. Because once you have an idea of what's going in and out every month, then you can start thinking about investing in goals and what that looks like for you. But most of us haven't even thought about that. Most of us are just living in the moment for today, to the point earlier, in my world where I was just putting money on credit cards to feel good about myself. We have to look at about, for us, and we talk a lot around development and self-development, personal development and growth mindset, is around what is it you actually want from your life? And most of us have no idea, and we haven't thought about it, which is why we live in the moment. But the reality is that we're living to potentially 95 or 100, the way medical science is going today. And therefore, we need our money to last so much longer. The last thing I want is that people think they're going to retire at 65 because that's a government number. Then it becomes 70, then it becomes 75, and then we don't have enough because we're relying on the government, a spouse, or someone else to look after us. And every little bit that you put away today is going to support you in your future, whatever that looks like for you.
Yeah, it's so true. You just triggered a thought in my mind while you were speaking there. If I recall correctly, Peter Mallouk talks about, in his book, he talks about loss aversion, which of course is not his topic. It's from Daniel Kahneman and his team, but loss aversion tends to be one of those big issues. It's like that cognitive bias that we have in many areas that triggers all of these different fears within us. And, money is definitely one of those areas that we tend to, we don't lock on to how we can utilize it properly. And it's encouraging listening to you talk about how people can manage their money properly and become cognizant about what they're doing with it to shape their future. So I really am encouraged by the work you're doing and of course the charities you're involved in. So Pauline, great conversation. Loved chatting with you. I hope to stay connected and we'll journey down this path. I can see many opportunities where I'd love to be involved. So thanks for being on the ET project, Pauline Kirk.
Thank you so much for having me, Wayne. Sincerely appreciate it. Thank you.
So what are you waiting for? Hit the subscribe button below and click on the bell icon so I can pop up in your feed occasionally with a great tip for your ultimate growth.